In a development that has captured the attention of global geopolitical observers, Russian President Vladimir Putin has reportedly dispatched a special VIP aircraft to personally transport Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the transitional president of Burkina Faso, to Moscow. This bold and symbolic move is not just a gesture of high-level diplomacy. It marks a significant shift in Russia's strategy towards Africa and potentially a new chapter in the foreign relations of Burkina Faso. But what does this unprecedented move really signify? Why would the Kremlin extend such a high-profile invitation to a young leader who only recently rose to power in a military coup? And what could this meeting in Moscow mean for the balance of influence between the West and Russia on the African continent? Let's begin with a quick background. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, just 36 years old, came into global spotlight in 2022 when he led a coup that ousted the previous transitional government in Burkina Faso. Since taking power, Traoré has positioned himself as a strong-willed nationalist, focused on ending the persistent jihadist insurgency in the country and rejecting foreign interference, particularly from France, the former colonial power. Under his leadership, Burkina Faso has seen the expulsion of French troops and diplomats, the termination of military agreements with Paris, and a rising alignment with alternative global powers, namely Russia. Now, let's look at the aircraft itself. The plane dispatched from Moscow was not an ordinary diplomatic jet. It was a state-of-the-art VIP aircraft, often used by top-ranking Russian officials. Outfitted with high-level security systems, a luxurious interior, and encrypted communication facilities, this aircraft symbolizes more than just transport. It signals respect, intention, and a serious commitment to dialogue. When the jet landed in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital, local media and onlookers were stunned. Security was tight, and the presence of Russian operatives was discreet yet undeniable. Sources on the ground report that Captain Traoré was accompanied by a small but elite delegation, including key figures from the transitional government and military leadership. Now, what's behind this Moscow invitation? First, Russia sees in Captain Traoré and Burkina Faso an opportunity to deepen its influence in West Africa, a region long dominated by Western powers. By supporting leaders who defy Western pressure and prioritize sovereignty, Russia positions itself as a partner that respects independence and offers military and economic cooperation without political strings attached. Second, Burkina Faso is rich in gold and other natural resources. For Moscow, securing strong ties with resource-rich countries is part of a broader economic and strategic play, especially in light of Western sanctions and diplomatic isolation following the Ukraine conflict. Third, the Sahel region is now a hotspot for counterterrorism efforts. Russia, through private military contractors like Wagner Group, has been providing security services in neighboring Mali and the Central African Republic. Extending this model to Burkina Faso could consolidate a Russian-led security corridor across the Sahel. Captain Traoré, on his part, is likely seeking more than just symbolism. His government is under pressure to deliver tangible security improvements and stabilize the country. A partnership with Russia could bring military equipment, training, intelligence sharing, and perhaps access to alternative development financing outside the traditional IMF World Bank framework. Observers note that this trip to Moscow is not just diplomatic, it's deeply strategic. The high-level reception in the Kremlin, the planned signing of bilateral agreements, and even potential discussions on energy, mining, and infrastructure projects indicate that both nations are preparing for a long-term partnership. However, not everyone views this development positively. Western analysts warn that increasing ties between Burkina Faso and Russia may further isolate the West African country from traditional allies and funding sources. They also raise concerns about the transparency and implications of working with Russian military contractors, given Wagner's controversial record in other African nations. But from Ouagadougou's perspective, the message is clear. Burkina Faso is charting a new course, one that prioritizes national sovereignty, multipolar alliances, and practical solutions over ideology. As the images of Captain Traoré stepping off the Russian jet in Moscow circulate on global news platforms, they tell a larger story of a changing world order, of emerging alliances, and of Africa's growing assertiveness on the global stage. Will this meeting usher in a new era of cooperation between Russia and Burkina Faso? Will other Sahelian nations follow suit? Or will this pivot provoke more external pressure and resistance? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: the flight from Ouagadougou to Moscow was not just a diplomatic journey, it was a symbol of a shifting global tide. Stay tuned to Urban Euro Rides for more updates on this developing story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the latest global news and analysis. In another significant development reshaping the balance of power in Africa, the government of Mali has officially confirmed the arrival of a new shipment of advanced Russian military hardware, including armored personnel carriers, surveillance drones, and heavy artillery systems. The delivery, facilitated under a confidential bilateral agreement signed earlier this year, underscores the deepening military alliance between Mali and the Russian Federation. According to sources within the Malian Ministry of Defense, the AOIM equipment arrived at Bamako's Modibo Keita International Airport under strict security measures. Russian technicians and military advisors reportedly accompanied the shipment to oversee installation, calibration, and training for Malian forces. This move comes amid a broader shift in Mali's foreign policy. After years of reliance on French-led counter-terrorism forces under Operation Barkhane, Mali's military-led government has severed ties with Paris, expelled French diplomats, and banned French media outlets from operating in the country. But why the dramatic pivot to Russia? Since the military coup in 2021, Mali's transitional government, led by Colonel Assimi Goïta, has accused Western nations of failing to support its sovereignty and security ambitions. With jihadist insurgencies threatening national stability, the government turned to Russia for what it described as unconditional support. Russia responded swiftly, not only with weapons and advisors, but also by deploying operatives from the UAE Wagner Group, the controversial private military company with deep ties to the Kremlin. Wagner has already been operating in several African nations, offering battlefield support in exchange for mining rights and other strategic concessions. The arrival of this new military equipment marks a turning point. Analysts believe it could strengthen Mali's ability to conduct independent counterterrorism operations and reduce its dependence on Western intelligence and logistics. However, the shift raises alarm bells in international circles. The United Nations and human rights organizations have expressed concern over alleged abuses by Wagner operatives in previous conflict zones. The U.S. State Department has warned Mali of the risks involved in entrusting its national security to unregulated mercenaries. Still, for the Malian leadership, the choice seems clear. They believe Western promises have fallen short, and that Russia offers a more committed and pragmatic partnership, even if it comes with its own set of risks. Mali's pivot is part of a broader regional trend. Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, Sudan, and Niger have all strengthened military or economic ties with Moscow in recent years. This growing Russian footprint across Africa could dramatically reshape regional dynamics, particularly as Western powers attempt to reassert influence. Meanwhile, Moscow continues to promote its Africa policy as one of mutual respect, sovereignty, and non-interference, principles that appeal strongly to leaders who feel abandoned or dictated to by the West. As Mali prepares for upcoming military offensives in its restive northern and central regions, the effectiveness of Russian-supplied hardware and advisors will be closely watched. Success on the battlefield could reinforce the model for other nations, while failure could lead to deeper instability. Either way, the world is watching. This isn't just a story about weapons or alliances, it's a story about a continent at a crossroads, choosing its partners, defining its future, and sending a message to the world. Africa will no longer be a passive player in global politics. Thanks for watching Urban Euro Rides. For more powerful updates on geopolitics, defense, and emerging world powers, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. The world is changing. Stay informed with us. In an unexpected diplomatic twist, the president of the Central African Republic, Faustin-Archange Touadéra, has officially announced that the country will adopt Russian as an additional official language, alongside French and Sango. The decision, confirmed during a joint press conference with Russian officials in Bangui, has sparked international debate and signaled a bold move in the deepening relationship between Russia and the heart of Africa. President Touadéra praised the Russian Federation for its unwavering support during the nation's toughest moments, especially in the face of internal rebel threats and chronic instability. Over the last few years, Russian military advisors and private security personnel, primarily from the Wagner Group, have played a central role in defending the capital and protecting strategic infrastructure. But this move to make Russian an official language goes far beyond security cooperation. It's a cultural and political signal, one that indicates a shift in national alignment and identity. Government officials explain that the decision is aimed at honoring the brotherhood between the two nations and facilitating the increasing number of diplomatic, educational, and military exchanges with Russia. Already dozens of Central African students have been granted scholarships to study in Moscow and St. Petersburg, and Russian language centers have opened in major cities across the country. Critics, however, argue that this step risks alienating other international partners and could deepen the country's dependency on Russia. Some see it as a form of soft power expansion, a calculated strategy by Moscow to root itself culturally and ideologically in the African continent. Still, on the streets of Bangui, reactions are mixed, but largely positive among those who've witnessed the vacuum left by the departure of French troops and UN peacekeepers. For many, Russia represents strength, reliability, and a fresh alternative in a world where former colonial powers are increasingly viewed with suspicion. Interestingly, this is not the first time a non-Russian-speaking country has embraced the Russian language for strategic reasons. Syria, Venezuela, and parts of Central Asia have adopted similar measures in response to increased cooperation with the Kremlin. From Moscow's perspective, this development is part of a broader plan, expanding its influence in Africa not just through weapons and deals, but through language, education, culture, and long-term institutional ties. The move also reflects a growing ideological divide on the global stage. As the West pushes back with sanctions, restrictions, and diplomatic pressure, Russia is investing in a new type of alliance, one built on mutual dissatisfaction with the current global order and a shared desire for multipolarity. As Central African schoolchildren begin to learn Russian alongside French and government documents are translated into Cyrillic script, the symbolism becomes clear. This is more than diplomacy. It's identity, it's future vision, and it's a declaration that the global balance of power is shifting, in classrooms, not just war rooms. Stay connected with Urban Euro Rides as we continue to cover these profound changes across the continent and beyond. Like, comment, and subscribe to stay ahead of the global curve. In a development sending shockwaves through West Africa and beyond, Niger's military government has signed a groundbreaking mutual defense pact with Burkina Faso and Mali, and the alliance being quietly described as the foundation of a new Sahel axis. The agreement, signed in Niamey behind closed doors but later confirmed by military spokespersons from all three countries, is aimed at creating a united military front against terrorism, foreign interference, and any attempt to destabilize their sovereignty. But behind the official language lies a much deeper and more symbolic shift, a rejection of the post-colonial Western order, and an embrace of regional strength rooted in Pan-African ideals. Under the terms of the pact, the three nations pledge to come to each other's defense in the event of internal rebellion, foreign military invasion, or political interference. Joint military exercises are already underway near the tri-border region, and there are growing reports that Russian advisors have played a role in the formation of this alliance, offering logistical support, intelligence sharing tools, and high-level strategic counsel. This alliance comes in the wake of escalating tensions between Niger and Western powers, particularly the United States and France. After the coup that ousted President Mohamed Bazoum, Niger's ruling generals expelled French forces, shut down several Western NGOs, and demanded the closure of U.S. drone bases operating in the Sahel. Western leaders condemned the actions, but on the ground, many Nigerians viewed it as the reclaiming of true national autonomy. Burkina Faso and Mali, under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré and Colonel Assimi Goïta respectively, expressed immediate solidarity with Niger. They too had experienced coups and had similarly distanced themselves from Western influence, turning instead toward Russia and each other. Together, the three form a formidable bloc, strategically located, rich in natural resources, and driven by a common narrative of reclaiming African dignity. But this shift is not without its risks. Analysts warn of an emerging Cold War in the Sahel, where Western interests clash with rising Eastern influence. The United States, which still has strategic interests in the region's fight against terrorism and in rare mineral extraction, now finds its position increasingly marginalized. Meanwhile, Russian flags are more frequently seen at rallies and in military outposts across the region. China, too, is watching closely, already well entrenched in African infrastructure and resource projects. Beijing has remained largely neutral in the political upheavals, but a united Sahel could become a key partner, or obstacle, in its broader Belt and Road strategy. For now, the people of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso are watching history unfold. After decades of broken promises, they are choosing new paths, new partners, and a new narrative, one where African nations lead African solutions. Whether this new Sahel axis will succeed or face internal fracture remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: the power dynamics of the continent are changing, and the world is taking notice. Thanks for joining us on Urban Eurorides. Hit like, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more updates on how geopolitics is reshaping the world from the ground up.